The report said Cadet Marcus Venn had failed 47 consecutive evaluations. It said his cardiovascular stress response was dangerously abnormal, that his pain sensitivity was so degraded he might be neurologically compromised, that his skeletal density readings broke 3 separate diagnostic machines before the medical staff simply wrote equipment error in the margin and moved on, that his reaction to simulated threat scenarios was so far outside predicted parameters that the Academy's behavioral AI had flagged him as a statistical impossibility and quietly stopped trying to model him. 47 failures. The report did not mention that every single one of those tests had been designed by species who had never, in the entirety of their evolutionary history, needed to become what the rest of the galaxy would one day learn to call the most dangerous thing alive. The report had no category for that. After today, it would need one. The Luminary Academy for Galactic Defense Orbital Platform Careth 7, above the gas giant Veluin. 0612 hours, Standard Galactic Time. The mess hall of the Luminary Academy smells of something between burnt copper and cold rain. That is simply what Vothene food smells like, and Cadet Marcus Venn has made his peace with it over the 14 months he has spent as the only human being on the most prestigious military training installation in the known galaxy. He sits alone at the far end of a table designed for beings who average 2.5 meters tall, his tray loaded with a caloric supplement brick that the Academy's nutritional AI generates specifically for him, dense, gray, and aggressively tasteless because the actual menu would put him in the medical bay for a week. He is not tall by human standards. 5 feet 11 inches, which the Academy records dutifully translate to 1.8 meters and immediately flag as below average for combat track enrollment. He is broad across the shoulders in a way that reads, to Vothene eyes, as a mild structural abnormality. His hair is dark, cut close to his skull. His jaw carries 4 days of stubble that the Academy's grooming AI keeps issuing automated citations about, citations Marcus keeps forgetting to address, now escalated 17 times, also forgotten. He is eating his gray brick and reading a physical book paper, printed, the kind that humans still inexplicably produce, when Senior Cadet Thranav sets a tray down across from him with the deliberate, performative care of someone making a point. Thranav is Vothene. By any reasonable metric, he is magnificent. 2.4 meters of lean, triple-jointed limbs, and a central nervous system so finely tuned he can perceive incoming projectiles at ranges human eyes cannot resolve. His skin is the deep violet gray of a Vothene warrior caste, and his 4 amber eyes carry the particular expression that Marcus has learned, over 14 months, to translate as I am about to enjoy this. Venn, Thranav says, settling into his alien scaled seat with fluid, unsettling grace. I saw your tactical assessment scores from yesterday. Marcus turns a page. Morning, Thranav. 47 consecutive sub-threshold evaluations. Thranav folds 2 of his forearms across his chest. The other 2 rest on the table with casual elegance. The academic board met last night. Instructor Quelris is recommending your formal review for remedial reclassification. Marcus takes a bite of the gray brick. Tastes like compressed nothing. Is she? You are aware, Thranav continues, with the patience of someone who has rehearsed this, that the Academy's enrollment criteria were amended to allow your application as part of the Galactic Integration Accords. A political gesture. He tilts his head. One that many on the academic board now consider a mistake. Marcus looks up from his book. His eyes are a very ordinary brown. There is nothing threatening in them, which is itself a kind of threat that neither Marcus nor Thranav currently understands. What did I score on the tactical assessment? Thranav's mandibles flex, the Vothene equivalent of a smirk. 63%. The threshold is 80. And you? 91. Marcus looks back at his book. What did you score on the endurance circuit last week? A pause. Fractional but present. The endurance circuit measures cardiovascular efficiency using Vothene baseline parameters. It is not dash. You collapsed at the 14-kilometer mark, Marcus says pleasantly. I finished. I scored below threshold because my heart rate was running at 180 and the diagnostic read that as critical distress. He turns another page. It wasn't. That is precisely the problem, Thranav says, and his voice carries something that might, in a being with less dignity, be called unease. Your physiological responses are wrong, Venn. The diagnostic systems are not malfunctioning. You are simply outside normal parameters. That is not a virtue. That is a liability. Marcus closes his book. He looks at Thranav for a long moment. You know what my grandfather told me? He says. Thranav waits. He said the only difference between a liability and a weapon is whether you're the one holding it. Marcus picks up his gray brick. Have a good morning, Thranav. Thranav leaves. Marcus finishes his breakfast. Around him, the mess hall fills with the controlled, elegant motion of 200 cadets representing 18 different species, and a combined galactic heritage of 11,000 years of military tradition. They are tall, fast, perceptive, refined by civilizations that have had centuries to optimize the science of warfare. None of them look at Marcus Venn. This is fine. Marcus has been invisible before. He comes from a planet where invisibility is a survival skill. The Luminary Academy is, by any architectural standard, extraordinary. It occupies a modified orbital platform 3 kilometers long and 800 meters wide, positioned in the upper atmospheric band of the gas giant Veluin, where the electromagnetic interference from the planet's charged storm systems provides natural sensor dampening, useful for a military installation that prefers not to advertise its coordinates. The platform was designed by Vothene architects working from precursor era schematics, and it shows. Every corridor flows with ruthless efficiency, wide enough for the largest enrolled species, lit by bioluminescent panels that cycle through the light spectrums optimal for each of the 18 enrolled species in sequence. Marcus has learned to keep his eyes down during the Keth spectrum cycles. The light gives him headaches he has stopped mentioning, because the medical bay keeps trying to treat him for something. He walks to his first evaluation of the day, Advanced Tactical Response, Section 4, through corridors that flow around him like water around a stone. Other cadets move with the liquid grace of beings evolved in gravity wells between 0.3 and 0.6 standard. They are faster than him, more agile. Their reaction times, as measured by the Academy sensors, average 0.09 seconds. Marcus runs at 0.18. The Academy's performance AI has logged this as significantly below combat threshold. What the performance AI does not log, because it has no framework for logging it, is that Marcus Venn's 0.18 second reaction time is achieved while simultaneously processing 4 separate threat vectors, filtering for false positives, and calculating weapon selection. The alien cadet's 0.09 seconds is a single-threaded response to a single stimulus. The Academy's evaluation system was not built to measure parallel processing in a brain shaped by 4 million years of predator-prey dynamics on a Class 9 death world. It was built to measure what Vothene military scientists understood about combat. Vothene military scientists have never been to Earth. Instructor Quelris is waiting in the tactical bay when Marcus arrives. She is Kethsolari, a species that communicates partially through subsonic resonance and partially through a bioluminescent shimmer running along the gill fronds at her neck. She is extraordinarily beautiful by standards that span most of the known galaxy, and she carries the patience of someone who has taught military strategy for 60 years alongside the particular disappointment of someone assigned a student she cannot categorize. Cadet Venn, she says. Her standard Galactic is perfect, which Marcus appreciates. Take your position. The tactical bay is a room-sized holographic simulation chamber. Today's evaluation scenario floats in the center of the space. A hostage extraction, blue-tagged friendly indicators deep in a red-tagged hostile zone. 3 possible approach vectors mapped in soft light. The other 4 cadets in Section 4 take their positions. Thranav is here. He is in every advanced section because he is the Academy's top-ranked cadet in his cohort. Beside him stands Cadet Seraph, a Melvari with 8 dexterous limbs and a tactical mind so precise she once planned a 60-move simulation sequence while asleep. Then Cadets Vaughn and Poth, both Grievian, their mirrored nervous systems allowing them to coordinate without speech. And Marcus. Standard evaluation, Quelris says. Threat neutralization, hostage security, extraction. Performance metrics are accuracy, speed, physiological stability, and decision efficiency. She looks at Marcus when she says physiological stability. She does not mean to. She does it anyway. The simulation begins. What happens next takes 44 seconds. The other 4 cadets execute a textbook flanking approach, elegant, coordinated, exactly as the Academy's tactical doctrine prescribes. Thrnav leads. Sareth coordinates the angles. The Grievian pair move in mirrored synchrony. They are objectively brilliant. They are also following a doctrine written for beings whose threat detection is primarily electromagnetic, and whose decision trees assume a rational, linear escalation. The simulation's hostile AI does not escalate linearly. It was programmed, Marcus noticed during his 3rd week, to occasionally run chaotic branch scenarios, random cascades that break predicted tactical sequences. Today is a chaotic branch day. The scenario collapses. A second hostile element appears from an unmapped vector. Saretha's approach is flanked. The Grievian pair, their shared nervous system optimized for mirror coordination, receive conflicting spatial data and spend a critical 0.4 seconds resolving it. Thrnav makes the tactically correct decision, retreat and reassess, and executes it perfectly. The hostages in the simulation die. Marcus is already on his 3rd approach vector. He moved there 12 seconds ago, when the hostile AI's positioning suggested not confirmed, suggested a possible second element. He is deep in the chaotic zone when it collapses, and he is wrong about everything except the one thing that matters. He is already between the hostile surge and the hostages. He stays there. The simulation ends. Performance metrics scroll across the display. Thrnav, 89%. Sareth, 84%. Grievian pair, 78% and 76%. Marcus Venn, 61%. His heart rate peaked at 171 beats per minute. The system logged it red. His movement patterns were flagged as erratic and non-doctrine. His weapon selection sequence was marked inefficient. The hostages survived, but the metric for physiological stability during threat event, calibrated against Vothene cortisol analog baselines, reads as severe distress. Quelris studies the results for a long moment. Cadet Venn, she says carefully, you anticipated the secondary element. Yes, ma'am. Your approach was not in the doctrine. No, ma'am. You survived the chaotic cascade. Yes, ma'am. She looks at his physiological readouts, at the heart rate that should, by every metric her training encompasses, indicate an organism in crisis. At the cortisol equivalent that reads like a being on the edge of shock. Are you all right? She asks. Marcus blinks. It is, he realizes, a genuine question. She is not being performative. She is looking at his numbers and seeing something that frightens her professionally. That's just what I run at, ma'am, he says. Under stress. A long pause. You were not distressed? No, ma'am. She makes a note. It reads, Venn. Physiological readings inconsistent with reported subjective state. Recommend continued medical monitoring. She does not write what she is actually thinking, which is, I don't know what I'm looking at. She dismisses the section. Marcus walks out. Thrnav falls into step beside him, which is unusual. You knew, Thrnav says. Not an accusation. Almost curious. Guessed, Marcus says. How? Marcus thinks about how to explain 4 million years of evolutionary predator detection to a being who evolved in a 0.4 gravity environment where the primary survival strategy was speed and perception rather than anticipation and endurance. The hostile AI repositioned twice in the first 8 seconds, he says finally. Both times, it chose cover that only made tactical sense if there was a second element it was coordinating with. Thrnav is quiet for a moment. I saw those repositions. I know. I assessed them as random variants. I know. Another silence. Why didn't you? Marcus looks at him. Because on Earth, he says, if something moves like it's coordinating with something you can't see yet, you assume there's something you can't see yet. And you move first. Thranav's four amber eyes study him with an expression Marcus can't quite read. That sounds, the Vothene cadet says slowly, exhausting. It's just Tuesday, Marcus says and keeps walking. He is called to the commandant's office at 1,400 hours. Commandant Threshval is Vothene, elder caste, and occupies a chair that is less a piece of furniture and more a throne that has filed the appropriate paperwork. She is 400 years old, and she has the eyes of someone who has stopped being surprised by most things in the galaxy. She looks at Marcus's file the way a diagnostician looks at a test result that contradicts itself. 47 evaluations, she says. Yes, ma'am. In 14 months, you have failed to meet threshold on every standardized assessment this institution administers. She folds two of her four hands. And yet your instructor's subjective reports are inconsistent with that record. Marcus waits. Instructor Quelrus writes that you demonstrate unusual tactical intuition. Instructor Baronsol notes that in 3 separate live-fire exercises, you achieved objective completion through methods not in the doctrine methods that could not subsequently be modeled by the assessment AI. She looks up. Instructor Vale, from your hand-to-hand evaluation, writes that he refuses to certify you as below threshold because, and I am quoting directly, the assessment rubric was clearly not designed with this species in mind, and certifying failure would be professionally dishonest. Silence. Instructor Vale, Marcus says carefully, is very thorough. He is. Threshval sets the file down. The academic board met last night. The formal recommendation is remedial reclassification, effectively a demotion to observer status, pending species-specific assessment recalibration that may take years to develop. She studies him. I have the authority to override that recommendation. Marcus is very still. I have not yet decided whether to use it, she says. I am going to ask you one question, cadet, and I want an honest answer. Yes, ma'am. Do you believe you belong here? The question hangs in the recycled air of the orbital station. Somewhere deep in the platform's superstructure, the environmental systems hum. The gas giant Veluan rotates below them, indifferent and enormous, its storm systems lighting the viewport in slow pulses of amber and violet. Marcus Venn thinks of his 47 failure reports. He thinks of his gray breakfast brick. He thinks of a grandfather who flew cargo runs on Earth's most dangerous mountain routes because someone had to, and who came home from every single one. Yes, ma'am, he says. I do. Threshval makes no expression he can read. Report to afternoon physical conditioning, she says. I will communicate my decision by end of week. Marcus leaves. He does not know that by end of week, the decision will have been made for both of them. He is in his bunk at 0300 when the station alarm sounds. Not a drill. Not an atmospheric alert or a debris proximity warning. A full station lockdown. The kind that means something has gone very, very wrong. 0307 hours. The alarm is a sound Marcus has never heard the Academy use before. A sustained 3-pulse tone in the 800 Hz range, which the orientation packet he received 14 months ago identified as priority amber hostile presence confirmed. Not simulated. Confirmed. He is out of his bunk before the second pulse completes. This is not a decision. This is a body built, refined across 4 million years of biological iteration, to convert alarm signal into kinetic response without the expensive luxury of conscious deliberation. His feet hit the floor. His hands find his uniform. His eyes, already adjusted to the low light because human dark adaptation takes 7 minutes and he has been asleep for 4 hours, sweep the room. His roommate, Cadet Joran, a Melvari exchange cadet with 8 arms and a remarkably peaceful disposition, is sitting up in his sleeping harness with all 8 limbs extended. His species' involuntary threat response presenting as full body reach. His bioluminescent skin markings have gone pale. the Melvari equivalent of going white with shock. Venn, Joran says. The alarm dash. I hear it. Marcus pulls on his boots. Stay here. The protocol is shelter in place, Joran says. The lockdown directive dash. Yeah, Marcus says, already at the door. The corridor outside is chaos in the specific, horrible way that chaos presents among beings who are highly trained but who have never experienced the thing they trained for. Cadets pour from their rooms in various states of dress. Some attempt to access the station's communication grid. Some follow shelter-in-place protocols with precise, earnest execution. Some are simply frozen, their nervous systems, evolved for speed and elegance, not for the grinding mammalian stubbornness that gets a primate through the first seconds of genuine threat, caught in the decision latency that no simulation ever quite captures. The station's internal comms crackle. A voice, not Commandant Thresfalls. Someone else, someone Marcus doesn't recognize, speaks in clipped standard Galactic. Attention, Luminary Academy personnel. This facility is now under the authority of the Reclamation Front. Comply with directives from Reclamation personnel, and no harm will come to Academy residents. Resistance will be treated as hostile action. This is not a simulation. The corridor goes very quiet, then loud again in a different way. Marcus is already moving, against the flow of cadets pushing toward the designated shelter zones, toward a sound he just registered underneath the announcement. Brief and low, partially masked by the alarm, but his auditory system filed it under the specific category his brain labels things that mean now. The sound of magnetic clamps releasing on a boarding collar. The hard seal clunk of an external access point being overridden from outside. They didn't come through the docking bay. They came through the hull. Which means they are not at the main security checkpoints. Which means the lockdown protocols, currently directing Academy security to the primary access corridors, are pointed the wrong direction. Marcus counts the time from the boarding collar sound. He runs the station's geometry in his head. 3 kilometers of platform. Sleeping quarters in the aft third. Main academic and tactical facilities in the center third. Command and communications hub in the forward third. The sound came from below and aft. He turns left, moving away from the shelter zones, toward the maintenance sublevel. A hand closes on his arm. Strong four-fingered, Vothin. Thranav. The protocol is Thranav begins. I know the protocol, Marcus says. Then why are you They boarded from the aft subhull. External breach, not the docking bay. Which means the lockdown is pointed the wrong way, and the shelter zones are he stops. Recalculates. Looks at Thranav. Where are the shelter zones? Thranav's 4 eyes process this at the speed his nervous system was built for. Forward midsection, he says. Corridors 7 through 11. And the aft sublevel breaches into the maintenance bypass that runs to Thanav stops. His mandibles draw tight. That runs to corridor 6. Adjacent. 1 corridor from the shelter zones. They're not here to occupy the station, Marcus says. They're here for the cadets. The Reclamation Front. He knows the name from Galactic political briefings, a separatist coalition that objects violently to the Galactic Integration Accords. The same accords that opened the Luminary Academy to non-Vothin species. The same accords that put Marcus Venn here. They are not here for the station. They are here for the symbol. 200 cadets from 18 species. The living proof of the accords, concentrated on a single platform above a gas giant, where there is no rapid response route and Veluan's electromagnetic interference limits emergency communications to almost nothing. Whoever planned this was patient, smart, and thorough. Marcus starts running. Venn. Thranav is behind him. Where are you going? Armory. The armory locks down during a hostile presence alert. Standard protocol requires Thranav. Marcus doesn't slow down. Are you coming or not? A beat. 2. Then the sound of long Vothin strides behind him. And that is answer enough. The maintenance sublevel of the Luminary Academy is not built for comfort. It is built for function, a skeleton of conduit, structural members, and recycled air ducting that smells of machine oil, ozone, and the particular mustiness of filtered atmosphere recirculated one too many times. The lighting down here is work light only, flat, white, unsparing. Marcus knows this level. He has spent more time down here than any other cadet, partly because the maintenance AI assigned him cleaning rotations in his first month, and partly because he realized, after the first week, that the maintenance sublevel was the one place on the station where no one came to tell him his numbers were wrong. He knows where the boarding collar access hatches are. He walked past all 6 of them during his cleaning rotations, and his brain, the same brain that flagged the hostile AI's tactical repositioning in the simulation, the same brain that 100,000 generations of predator and prey iteration built for exactly this purpose, filed their locations without being asked. Hatch 3. That was the sound. He stops at a junction, holds up a fist. The hand signal is human, but Thranav has been paying attention and listens. Footsteps. Not the fluid, near-silent movement of Vothine. Heavier. Booted. Multiple contacts moving in a loose file rather than the disciplined 2x2 of a military breach team. Insurgents, not soldiers. Armed, but not drilled. 6, maybe 8. Then a voice low and clipped, carrying the accent of the outer reach systems, speaking in what Marcus thinks might be Reclamation Front internal dialect. He looks at Thranav. The Vothine cadets' 4 eyes are tracking the sounds with the precision of a species whose hearing evolved to isolate individual signals from the dense electromagnetic fog of their home system's charged atmosphere. He holds up 7 fingers. 7. Marcus nods. He points at himself, then at the left-hand corridor. He points at Thranav, then at the right, and holds up 3 fingers, the universal count. Thranav's mandibles tighten. He looks at Marcus with an expression that is, for the first time in 14 months, something close to uncertainty. That expression says, you want to go at 7 armed insurgents with 2 of us. Marcus meets his eyes, says nothing, waits. He is calm, not performing calm, actually calm. His heart rate is elevated, he can feel it, the deep steady thud of a cardiovascular system that moves more blood per beat than any Vothine equivalent, pumping now with the focused intensity of a body that has downshifted every non-essential system and redirected those resources to the things that keep an apex predator functional in the next 45 seconds. His hands are steady. His vision has narrowed to the tunnel-bright focus that humans call adrenaline, and that the Academy's medical AI recently flagged as cortisol analog crisis state requiring immediate intervention. It is not a crisis state. It is the state, the one his species was built for. Thranav reads something in his face. Not calm, he will realize later, but purpose, and gives a single nod. Marcus goes left. The first insurgent he meets is Vothine. Big and armored, moving with the professional caution of someone who has done this before. He is carrying what Marcus's eye identifies as a Gareth Solaris pulse carbine, standard outer reach militia weapon. Effective range 200 meters. Cyclic rate high enough to be a problem in an open corridor. In a maintenance junction where the maximum sight line is 4 meters, it is a club. Marcus hits him from a maintenance alcove, leading with his shoulder, and the insurgent discovers something no tactical briefing in the outer reach prepared him for: the full-body impact of a 90-kilogram organism that evolved in 1.0 standard gravity and has been weight training since he was 16, moving at speed in a 0.7 gravity environment. The physics are not complicated. Force equals mass times acceleration. In a reduced gravity environment, a human moving at the same speed as an equivalent mass Vothine delivers proportionally greater effective impact, because the human's musculature was calibrated for a heavier world. Every step Marcus Venn takes on this station is, biomechanically speaking, somewhat explosive. The insurgent goes into the opposite wall hard enough to dent the conduit housing. The pulse carbine hits the floor. Marcus lands on top of him, already moving for the weapon, already calculating the next 3 seconds. The insurgent is not unconscious. He is Vothine, and his recovery speed is extraordinary, both upper arms reaching for Marcus before Marcus has the carbine's grip. What he encounters is a human headbutt. Not theatrical. Not aimed at anything symbolic. Aimed with the anatomical precision of a primate whose skull evolved specifically as a striking surface, the frontal bone dense, the brow ridge pronounced, the neck musculature generating impact force that most species, evolving in lighter gravity worlds, simply never needed to develop. The insurgent's grip releases. Marcus has the carbine. He is up in 1.4 seconds from initial contact to weapon acquisition. He is running. Behind him comes the controlled, devastating sound of Thranav engaging his side of the junction, the compressed air snap of a Vothene nerve strike, 3 times in quick succession, followed by a silence that means Thranav's targets are no longer a factor. They come together at the corridor intersection. Marcus has a pulse carbine. Thranav has lifted a second one from the insurgent, he left crumpled against a structural beam. The Vothene cadet looks at Marcus with an expression that has abandoned uncertainty and replaced it with something Marcus doesn't have a word for yet. For more, Thranav says. They split, 2 heading toward Corridor 6, 2 staying at the breach point. We take the 2 going to 6 first, Marcus says, already moving. If they reach the shelter zones dash. Agreed. They move together. Not with the mirror-perfect synchrony of the Grievian cadets. Not with the geometric precision of Academy doctrine. They move the way predators move, in functional relation to the terrain, the threat, and the next 2 seconds, and nothing more and nothing less. This is something the Academy's tactical doctrine does not teach, because the Academy's tactical doctrine was written by beings who think about warfare in terms of elegant systems. Marcus thinks about warfare in terms of keeping the next heartbeat. They find the 2 insurgents at the Corridor 6 junction in the process of overriding the blast door separating the maintenance sublevel from the cadet shelter zones. One is Vothene, working the override panel with the focused attention of a technician. The other is a species Marcus doesn't recognize, tall, 4-legged, carrying what looks like a Keleth Arms dispersal cannon. The kind that fires a wide-pattern concussive blast defective against group targets. Against 200 cadets in a shelter zone, it would be a massacre. Marcus raises the pulse carbine. He is not the Academy's best marksman. At stationary targets on a range, under controlled conditions, his scores are below threshold because the Academy's marksmanship evaluations measure single-shot precision at defined distances, under defined lighting against defined targets. They do not measure what happens when a human locks onto a threat to something he is protecting. He fires twice. The Vothene technician drops away from the panel. The 4-legged insurgent spins toward the sound, raising the dispersal cannon, and Marcus is already moving left because the survival reflex managing threat anticipation in his species told him 0.3 seconds ago that the weapon was going to track right toward where he was, and that he should not be where he was. The dispersal blast hits the corridor wall where Marcus had been standing. The concussive wave knocks him sideways, slams him into a conduit housing hard enough that 3 ribs flex in a way they are not supposed to flex, and his vision goes white at the edges for a full second and a half. In that second and a half, Thranav's pulse carbine fires 4 times with the metronomic precision of a being whose nervous system can perform targeting calculations that make human marksmanship look like pointing. The 4-legged insurgent goes down. Marcus straightens up. The white at the edges of his vision fades. He breathes, and the breath does something complicated on the right side of his chest. He notes this the way he notes a mechanical fault as information to be managed, not as an emergency. "You're injured," Thranav says. He is looking at Marcus the way Quelrus looked at his physiological readings, like something is wrong with the output. "Ribs," Marcus says. "Probably cracked. Keep moving." Cracked ribs are a Thranav's species database search for the appropriate medical severity classification takes 0.2 seconds. That is a significant trauma event. Your respiratory Thranav. Marcus looks at him, meeting all 4 amber eyes in sequence, the way he learned to do, because Vothene process focal attention differently and holding only 2 reads as evasion. How many insurgents are left? A beat. 2 at the breach point. And we don't know their communication status. If they've signaled the main force then we have a timeline. Marcus checks the carbine's charge. How are you holding up? Thrnav processes the question as if it is in a foreign language, because in 14 months, Marcus is the first fellow cadet who has asked it. I am functional. Good. Marcus moves. Stay close. The breach point hatch 3, exactly where Marcus calculated, opens into a docking collar connecting to a ship Marcus has never seen a schematic for, but immediately categorizes as a converted light freighter. The kind that outer reach separatist groups operate because they are cheap, durable, and capable of running without the registration signatures the Galactic Commerce Authority monitors. The two remaining insurgents at the breach point are not technicians. They are guards. The distinction matters. The technicians they met in the corridor were focused on their task. These two are focused on the corridor, weapons up, covering the hatch from a barricade of mobile equipment cases someone dragged into position with genuine tactical competence. Marcus and Thrnav are behind a conduit junction, 12 meters back. The carbines have the range, but the barricade has the angle. Any direct approach is a kill box. Marcus looks at the ceiling. He looks at the conduit housing. He looks at the environmental systems junction above the barricade, the recycled air ducting, 50 millimeters of aluminum composite, carrying processed atmosphere at pressure. He looks at the carbine in his hands. Pulse carbines can crack pressurized conduit at this range? He asks Thrnav quietly. Thrnav follows his gaze and processes. Sustained fire on the junction coupling, yes. But the atmosphere discharge would be dash. Loud, cold, and blinding. Marcus says. Yeah. Thrnav is quiet for exactly the time it takes to run the geometry. That would require firing through an indirect angle that our carbines can't dash. He stops. You want to use the conduit junction as a ricochet surface. The wall plate is reflective alloy, Marcus says. Roughly 45 degrees. He hasn't measured it. He looked at it once and his brain filed the angle the way it files everything that might matter later. Fire off the plate into the junction coupling. 2 shots, maybe 3. That is not a targeting solution the Academy curriculum covers. No, Marcus agrees. Thrnav looks at him, then at the wall plate, then back. If the ricochet disperses, if the angle is off dash, then we're in trouble, Marcus says. But once that junction blows, they're blind and deaf for 4, maybe 5 seconds. That's enough. Another pause, longer this time. How do you know it will work? Marcus thinks of a grandfather, of cargo runs over mountain passes in weather that grounded every other pilot, of the particular human habit of doing the math in your head when there's no time to do it on paper and then going. I don't, he says, but I know what happens if we don't try. Thrnav's mandibles set. It is, Marcus has learned the Vothine expression for a decision being made. Your angle, Thrnav says. I'll cover the moment the junction blows. Marcus cites the wall plate. He breathes out, holds the exhale, an old trick, a shooter's trick, written into SIG Sauer's marksmanship manuals and into the muscle memory of every human who has ever needed their hands to be still at the wrong moment, and fires. Once, twice. The third shot kisses the junction coupling at an angle that should not work. It does. The conduit blows. The sound is enormous. The released atmosphere hits the barricade in a blast that knocks both guards sideways. Their vision disrupted by the sudden condensation cloud. Their auditory processing overwhelmed by the decompression crack. For seconds, Thrnav moves with the speed that his species evolved for, and it is extraordinary. He is behind the barricade before Marcus is halfway there, and both guards are neutralized before Marcus arrives. Marcus arrives with cracked ribs, a carbine, and the particular expression humans get when the plan worked. Thrnav is staring at him. You calculated that ricochet, he says. Estimated, Marcus says. Different word. You estimated a ricochet angle off a reflective wall plate, in low light, under duress, with cracked ribs, and it was correct. Close enough. Marcus is already looking at the boarding collar, at the converted freighter beyond. Is there a pilot in your cohort? Thrnav blinks, all 4 eyes. I hold a Class 3 navigation certification. Close enough. Marcus says again and steps through the hatch. What happens next takes 11 minutes. It involves a freighter's communications array, Thrnav's navigation certification, Marcus's working knowledge of how converted freighters typically arrange their antenna systems, knowledge accumulated during 3 weeks in his first month helping the Academy's maintenance crew repair a similar vessel that had docked for resupply, and a direct emergency signal to the Galactic Defense Coordinator's office. The signal bypasses Veluan's electromagnetic interference by the straightforward expedient of physically moving the freighter to the edge of the interference zone and pointing the antenna at the relay station Marcus noticed. During a cleaning rotation on the outer observation deck, positioned at bearing 227 by 14 above the ecliptic. He noticed it because he notices things. That is what his brain was built for. The GDC's response time is 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, Marcus and Thrnav hold the breach point against 2 additional insurgent elements attempting to re-establish control of the hatch. During one of these engagements, a pulse bolt punches through Marcus's left shoulder at a range of 6 meters. An alien physiological report would call this a serious wound. Objectively, it is. The bolt penetrates and exits, clipping the deltoid muscle and nicking the scapula in a way that will require surgical repair and 6 weeks of rehabilitation. Marcus shoots the insurgent who fired it and then keeps shooting. His hands are shaking not from fear, but from the particular combination of blood loss and adrenaline saturation his species calls the edge. The place where the body has spent all its reserves and is now running on structural minimum. That minimum in a 0.7 gravity environment is still enough. At one point, Thrnav tells him to stop. Marcus looks at him with those ordinary brown eyes that hold nothing threatening. How many shelter zones have reported clear? Thrnav checks the commandeered communications line. 6 of 9. 3 more, Marcus says, and keeps holding the hatch. 0412 hours. The GDC Rapid Response Team breaches the station from the forward docking array at 0409. They are Vothene military, not cadets, not instructors, but the full expression of what a warrior civilization builds when it has had 6 centuries to optimize. They move through the station with a lethality that is, by any measure, awe-inspiring. They find the aft breach point already contained. They find 2 cadets, 1 Vothene, 1 human holding a choke point with captured weapons and improvised barricades assembled from equipment cases and, inexplicably, a length of atmospheric conduit bent into a diagonal brace using nothing but bare hands and a maintenance tool. They find 43 meters of controlled corridor between the breach point and the shelter zones. They find all 9 shelter zones intact. 200 cadets. 18 species. Alive. The GDC team leader, a Vothene commander carrying the rank marks of 30 years of active service, looks at Marcus Venn. At the shoulder wound. At the way he is standing, the way a structure stands when it will not fall regardless of what has been thrown at it. At the carbine still in his hands. At the cracked ribs evident in the shallow, careful rhythm of his breathing. At the blood soaking his left sleeve. She looks at his academy record, which her team's AI pulled before they boarded. 47 consecutive sub-threshold evaluations. She looks back at him. Cadet, she says in standard Galactic. What is your species? Human, Marcus says. Earth. Sol system. She is quiet for a moment. Earth is a Class 9 death world. Yes, ma'am. Your gravity is 1.0 standard. Yes, ma'am. She looks at the corridor. At the contained breach point. At Thrnav, who stands beside Marcus with the expression of someone who has spent the last hour having a fundamental assumption revised at high speed. At the barricades, the captured weapons, the blown conduit junction, the 7 insurgents who are no longer a problem. Who else assisted you? She asks. Cadet Thrnav, Marcus says. He did the hard parts. Thrnav makes a sound that is not standard Galactic. It is a Vothene expression for which standard Galactic has no direct translation, falling somewhere between that is not true and why would you say that and I don't know what to do with you. The GDC commander looks at Thrnav. Confirm. Thrnav is quiet for a full 3 seconds. Then, Cadet Venn identified the breach vector, planned the tactical response. held this position through 2 additional engagements after sustaining a significant wound. A pause. I assisted. The commander looks at Marcus for a long time. Then she does something Marcus has never seen a Vothine Eldercaste officer do. She inclines her head, not the shallow acknowledgement of social equals, but the deep incline. The one reserved, Thranav will explain to him later, for moments of genuine, unsettled respect. Get him to medical, she says to her team. Then to Marcus, Earth. Ma'am, I have served for 30 years, she says. I have read the Galactic Defense Codex and the Tactical Records Archive, and I hold 3 commendations for actions under fire. She looks at the corridor one final time. I have never held a breach point for 1 hour with a punctured lung and a through-and-through shoulder wound. Marcus opens his mouth. The ribs, she says. At minimum. Your breathing pattern suggests dash. I didn't know about the lung, he admits. She stares at him. I noticed the ribs, he says. He is in the medical bay for 9 days. The shoulder requires surgery. The ribs require stabilization. The lung requires 3 days of assisted respiration while it reinflates on its own because Vothine medical technology, designed for Vothine biology, has to be recalibrated for a human chest cavity 3 separate times before the attending physician, Dr. Sethar, stops applying the standard treatment protocol and starts listening to what Marcus tells her about how human lungs behave. Commandant Threshval visits on day 2. She sits beside his bunk. She does not ask for a chair, simply settles into a position that works, which Marcus notes as an unusual expression of adaptability for an Eldercaste Vothine, and places his academy record on the surface beside him. The academic board met again this morning, she says. Marcus watches her from the pillow. He is very tired. The adrenaline that carried him through 73 minutes of crisis has been metabolized, and what remains is the specific, profound exhaustion of a body that spent everything it had and is now making a full accounting. The board, she continues, has voted to suspend standardized evaluation metrics for human cadets, pending a full species-specific assessment recalibration. He is quiet. They have also recommended that you be retained in the advanced combat track. She looks at him. The GDC commander submitted a commendation this morning. She wants you on active duty track after graduation. A pause. She used a phrase I had to have translated. She said you had the gift. She's being generous, Marcus says. She is being accurate, Threshval says, and there is no softness in it. It is a factual correction delivered in the tone of someone for whom facts are not optional. I have reviewed the security footage from last night. I watched you identify the breach vector, move against protocol, disable 7 armed insurgents, plan and execute an improvised tactical action that our modeling AI could not have generated, transmit an emergency signal by physically repositioning a docked vessel, and hold a defensive position for 61 minutes while sustaining injuries that would have incapacitated any cadet of any species enrolled in this institution. She pauses. And then, she says, you told the GDC commander that Thranav did the hard parts. Marcus says nothing. Why? He thinks about this. Outside the medical bay's viewport, the gas giant Veluin rotates in its slow, indifferent way, amber and violet and enormous, its storms illuminating the dark in deep, sweeping pulses. Because he trusted me, Marcus says finally, when he had every reason not to. Every evaluation, every review, everything his training told him about what a good officer looks like, none of that was me. And he came anyway. He looks at the viewport. That's worth something. Threshval is quiet for a long time. 47 evaluations, she says. Yes, ma'am. Every one of them, she says slowly, was administered using instruments calibrated for species who did not evolve on a death world. Yes, ma'am. Instruments that read your cardiovascular stress response as crisis when it was function. Your pain tolerance as neurological deficit when it was adaptation. Your movement patterns as erratic when they were anticipatory. She looks at his file one last time, then sets it down. We were measuring the wrong things. You were measuring what you knew, Marcus says. That's not wrong. That's just the starting point. She looks at him. Something in her face shifts, not dramatically, not in the open way human faces move, but in the small, precise way that means something has changed in how she is seeing a thing. You are remarkably gracious, she says. For someone we nearly expelled. Nearly, Marcus says. Thrnav visits on day 4. He brings Marcus a physical book, not paper, but a data tablet loaded with the complete archive of Earth military history, which Thrnav apparently requested from the Galactic Knowledge Exchange over the course of a single night. Marcus would find the reading habits excessive if he weren't moved by them. Thrnav sets the tablet on the bed and stands there with the posture of a being who has something to say and is not certain how to begin. I owe you an apology, Thrnav says. You don't, Marcus says. I told you your failure evaluations reflected genuine deficiency, Thrnav says. I told you that you were outside normal parameters, as a liability. You were reading the same data everyone else was. I was not reading you, Thrnav says. I was reading the reports. His 4 amber eyes are steady, direct, the Vothine expression for a thing being said plainly, without the social elegance his species normally wraps around difficult truths. In the simulation last month, the chaotic branch scenario, you knew, before any of us, and I chose not to consider that meaningful because it did not fit the framework I had. Marcus looks at him. And now, Thrnav says, I would like to understand the framework you are using. He gestures slightly at his own face, at the 4 eyes, the perception hardware his species spent 100,000 years perfecting. I can see threats at ranges you cannot resolve. My reaction speed is twice yours. My neural processing dash is optimized for a single threat in a clear field, Marcus says, not unkindly, which is exactly what your planet gave you. So you built exactly the right tools. And your planet, Thrnav says, gave me a lot of threats in fields that were never clear, Marcus says. So we built different tools. A silence settles between them, not uncomfortable. The kind that arrives when 2 beings discover they have been looking at the same problem from opposite ends. The Earth Military Archive, Thrnav says, nodding at the tablet. I began reading it last night. What did you think? I think, Thrnav says carefully, that humans have been waging war for a very long time, in conditions that would have ended any civilization I am aware of, and that instead of ending you, he pauses. It refined you. Yeah, Marcus says. That's one word for it. I would like to train with you, Thrnav says, when you have recovered, formally as a combined element. Your anticipation, your endurance, your improvisational capacity. He meets Marcus's 2 eyes with all 4 of his own. And my speed, my precision, my perception range. A beat. I believe the sum would be significant. Marcus thinks of the boarding collar, of the ricochet off the reflective wall plate, of a Vothine cadet who ran toward a threat instead of away from it because a human with a gray breakfast brick and 47 failure reports told him to. Yeah, he says. I think it would be. The revised assessment framework is called the Venn Protocol, a name someone in the GDC's administrative office chose, and that Marcus will spend the next 6 months trying unsuccessfully to have changed. It recalibrates 12 standard evaluation metrics against species-specific physiological baselines. It introduces a new assessment category called adaptive improvisation that no previous evaluation had measured, because no previous evaluation had needed to, until a human showed up and kept scoring 0 across every established category while doing something the metrics had no language for. The academic board adopts it unanimously. Instructor Quelris submits a personal addendum to the framework's documentation. Instructor Vale sends Marcus a message consisting entirely of, I told them. The GDC commander's commendation triggers something further. A formal inquiry, at the galactic level, into the classification of Earth and the beings it produces. The inquiry will take years. It will involve biologists, military historians, ethicists, and specialists from 14 species who will argue at length, and with impressive documentation, about what exactly a Class 9 death world does to the thing that survives it. Marcus is not involved in the inquiry. He is in the tactical bay, running a joint assessment with Thrinav that keeps producing scores the Academy's AI classifies as anomalous, because the combination of human anticipation and Vothene precision is generating tactical outcomes the modeling system cannot reproduce. Between runs, he eats a gray brick because the nutritional AI still hasn't worked out how to make Vothene food compatible with human biology, and at this point it has become something of a principle. His shoulder is healing. His ribs are healing. His lung is fully reinflated. Somewhere in the Galactic Knowledge Exchange, a new file is accumulating data. Its working title is Terran Combat Physiology, an assessment of death world-derived tactical advantages. His first line reads, "The subject in question failed 47 consecutive standardized evaluations. We recommend reading no further without first reconsidering what the word failure means." Marcus Venn finishes his gray brick. He picks up his carbine. He walks back into the tactical bay where Thrinav is waiting and where, for the first time in 14 months, the evaluation system is prepared to measure what he actually is. The doors close behind him. Below, the gas giant Veluan rotates in its old, slow way, indifferent to the small moments happening above it. But small moments have a way of maturing, especially the ones the universe hasn't learned to measure yet.